Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, I rise on Standing Order 42-6, seeking your permission.
Approval granted. You may continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, having listened carefully to the Honorable Chief Secretary, it is clear to me that what we are engaged here in today is little more than a process in futility. The outcome is predetermined. The Chief Secretary has already made up his mind, and he has the requisite votes to force this motion through. But I rise not because I expect to change his mind, but because I am duty-bound by the over 35,000 Tobagonians who either by casting their vote or withholding it made clear that they do not support this TPP administration or its approach to Tobago's autonomy. And so, Madam Presiding Officer, I must register my unreserved objection to this motion, not because I oppose autonomy or the right for every Tobagonian to self-determination, but because I oppose the dangerous path this Chief Secretary has chosen to pursue. You see, Madam Presiding Officer, the right to self-determination is a fundamental right to every Tobagonian, a right that belongs to each and every one of us in here, and a right that each and every one of us deserves to have a say. Whether you live or reside in Tobago currently, in Trinidad, or in the diaspora, it is not a gift to be granted from his friends in the Philippines and South Trinidad. It is a right that must begin with we, the people of Tobago. And therefore, the fact that this motion excludes the people of Tobago. I've looked at the motion, Madam Presiding Officer, and nowhere in the recital of this motion, nowhere is the words the people of Tobago mentioned anywhere in that motion, consulting with the people of Tobago. It's not there. And therefore, while you have the Chief Secretary publicly stating or trying to give some kind of assurance that the people would be consulted, this is the same Chief Secretary who stood here and gave us the assurance with those road contracts that no contractor will be paid a dime.
Assemblyman Morris, relevance, please.
I am speaking about my inability to trust the Chief Secretary's words. And I'm sharing with you a perfect example why I cannot conscionably trust his words, because right in this house, Madam Presiding Officer, you will recall, we were told that we have his assurance that not a red cent will be paid to any contractor until they completed the work, and it will only be paid 9 months thereafter, and we are learning that did not happen.
Minority Leader, I would prefer you keep to the context of this motion, please, moving forward.
Nope, I stand so guided, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, this motion by the Chief Secretary is disturbing. That the Chief Secretary, the one elected to lead this island in pursuit of that very right, has chosen to sideline the people and hand their voice to the very government from which they are seeking to get greater freedom. And this, I believe, is the core flaw of this motion. Nowhere, as I said, in this motion seeks to empower the people of Tobago to have their right to self-determination, because at the end of the day, we spoke about autonomy in this motion, And at no point did the Chief Secretary seek to define what is this autonomy. Because he keeps saying autonomy, autonomy, autonomy. In a real sense, we have some level of autonomy already. And therefore, if we do not even know what we are trying to get, how could we then say we are going down to Trinidad to negotiate? The people of Tobago don't even know what you are going to negotiate on their behalf. And therefore, there needs to be a clear conversation with the people of Tobago, get from the people of Tobago what do they really want, because in this very conversation of autonomy, there's various configuration on how that autonomy should actually be. There are some people who believe, as it was the consensus with the Orville-London process, that we should remain a united Trinidad and Tobago. There are other Tobagonians who are advancing this issue, and in fact, the issue of federalism was advanced as a conversation by Tobagonians. And then there are other Tobagonians who are talking about confederation. So therefore, how could we start a conversation on the right of Tobagonians to self-determination without Tobagonians themselves saying to you, what do they want? That's supposed to be where the conversation starts and ultimately where it ends. And therefore, it is my respectful view that the Honorable Chief Secretary is putting the cart before the horse. Madam Presiding Officer, I want to take some time because, you see, I felt like this was not a motion really about trying to deal with the issue of autonomy, but it was a motion to further campaign. And in campaigning, the Chief Secretary attempted deliberately so to mislead this House on the history of the PNM's role in Tobago's autonomy quest. And I want to start from the beginning, because the Chief Secretary deliberately indicated that it's the Prime Minister, the PNM then, went to Marlborough's house. He failed to mention that it was both the government and the opposition at that time that both went to Marlborough House. So the fact that he gave the impression so it was the PNM that left out Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, and that that is the first misleading statement. Second one is this. Madam Presiding Officer, the second one is this. The PNM... I'll give you... Yeah, I just want my time.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. The member is deliberately misleading this House. I spoke to Trinidad going to Marlborough's house without Tobago. That could be Trinidad, including PNM and opposition. I said Tobago was not represented there. Not PNM. I said Trinidad went without Tobago. That's a huge difference.
Madam Presiding Officer, that's a moot point to which I will not deliberate extensively. The second... Madam Presiding Officer, although I was sent out for 5 minutes, I sat in silence for the most part and I listened to the Honorable Chiefs.
Members, please allow Assemblyman Morris to present without interruption. Please continue.
Madam Presiding Officer, so the second misleading point is the whole issue of the creation of the Tobago House of Assembly. The PNM, the PNM does not just simply talk autonomy. It is part of PNM's policy at the highest level of the organization. And the PNM, by resolution in 1977, confirmed its support for Tobago's autonomy. That is PNM's history. And more than that, the Chief Secretary deliberately left out that it was at PNM government that worked with Dr. Winston Murray, even when Mr. A.N.R. Robinson walked out of his own motion, to craft this thing that created the Tobago House of Assembly, because it was the PNM who had the majority, and therefore for the assembly to be created, it was not just the work of the minority. The government of the day, which was a PNM government, supported that process. More than that, Madam Presiding Officer, the best opportunity, and we must be real with history, the best opportunity for Tobago to be granted self-governance in the way Tobagonians wanted it would have been under the A.N.R. Robinson NAR government between the period 1986 to 1991, because they had a supermajority. It was 33-3. And therefore, if anybody is to be blamed, if we are being real and we are being honest, the best opportunity that a Tobagonian leading the government had was during the period of the Honorable A.N.R. Robinson, when he had a supermajority of 33-3, where you could have made absolutely any adjustment, amendment to the Constitution. That is the history. And the history of the amended bills in 1996 also will demonstrate and show on the Hansard that when that bill was put to a vote, every single PNM representative in the House voted in support of those bills. And Madam Presiding Officer, the Chief Secretary himself just admitted that the best process and perhaps the best version of an autonomy bill to be placed anywhere in the public domain is a bill that was led by a PNM Chief Secretary, Mr. Orville London. So how could you turn around after admitting that and try to create this narrative as though the PNM is against Tobago getting its autonomy? The PNM has been consistent. We have always been consistent that we support Tobago's right to self-determination, more than autonomy, because autonomy was granted, a level of it was granted in 1980. And what we are now pursuing is our right to self-determination, to determine how we want to be governed within this space called Tobago. And the only people who should have the authority to determine that are Tobagonians in this Tobago space. And for the Chief Secretary to abdicate his responsibility after promising post him rejecting those bills in Parliament, that he will put together a committee, and he is the one who said he will come back to the people of Tobago, he will consult with the people of Tobago, and instead of consultation, what we are doing here today is him finding a way to sell out Tobago, to eliminate the voices of Tobago, to appease his political interests and that of his friends in Trinidad. That is what we are doing here today. That is the exercise. It is not about Tobagonians. It is about the Chief Secretary fulfilling his personal ambitions.
Assemblyman Morris, before you move on, you were using a term, and after I conferred with my guidelines, please refrain from using misleading the public. It's actually unparliamentary language.
I'm so guided. So I just wanted to spend some time for the younger ones, because even when I was younger, I accepted that kind of narrative that the PNM was not interested in Tobago's autonomy. But the history does not support that fact, because at every turn, the history would show that the PNM voted in support of greater autonomy for Tobago. As a matter of fact, the one time the PNM objected to the autonomy bills being in Parliament, it would have been on the same principle that it did not involve the people of Tobago, because the very UNC to which the Prime Minister, same Prime Minister, would have bypassed, disrespected, ignored the people of Tobago and went ahead on her own process of getting bills and bringing it 2 weeks before an election. That is the history of the people he is now giving the authority to determine our future. And you would think people with that kind of history, you would be careful in your associations. You would be extra careful, but not this Chief Secretary. Madam Presiding Officer, the Chief Secretary also refers to the 2018 bills as the Rowley bills. And I also want to clarify that as well, because those bills came from a process, a 10-year process of extensive consultation, collaboration with the people of Tobago, led by Mr. Orville London. Those bills were approved right in this House, sent to the Parliament. In fact, it was sent as a bill to the Cabinet. The Cabinet accepted that bill without adding a comma, full stop, exclamation, and laid it in the Parliament. And it was the Parliament that decided it will be sent to a JSC for technical review, etc., etc. And it's out of that JSC process that birthed those two bills, because it was determined the best approach is to first entrench the law and then create this thing that is the Tobago Island government that would give life to the very law that was entrenched in the Constitution. So it is disingenuous, and I hope that is parliamentary. It is disingenuous to claim those bills as simply Rowley bills, as to create this kind of hateful feeling and emotion. Those bills were basically coming out of the usual parliamentary process that included both the government, the opposition, and the independent senators. Madam Presiding Officer, I want us to let us not forget the words of our Honorable Chief Secretary spoken on December 9, 2024, after the failure of the bills. He said Tobagonians were not consulted in any meaningful way. That is our Chief Secretary, who is now bringing a motion that doesn't even have a line about consulting with Tobagonians. But he was saying Tobagonians were not consulted in any meaningful way. He also said it seems deliberate that central government will never get this right. And he was referring to the need to have consultations with Tobagonians. Yet in this process, we heard him today, the same Chief Secretary who told us we didn't have enough consultation is saying today that Tobagonians are consultation fatigued. I want you all to take a minute and pause and really embrace what the same Chief Secretary who in December was saying Tobagonians were not consulted enough is saying now that Tobagonians have been consulted too much. And how could you trust? Trust, this is about character. And if you were not consulted enough in December, how could you, when we had no consultation between those intervening periods, be consulted too much, that we are fatigued? And therefore, this Chief Secretary is a man not to be trusted, my fellow Tobagonians. This is not evolution. This process is clearly deception. Sabotage rebranded as salvation, because you hear him using biblical words as well in this process. But it is sabotage rebranded as salvation. This motion does not invite the people of Tobago. It does not even respect this House. Because we are told of this matrix that the Chief Secretary created, And he didn't have even the decency to bring it and share it with his peers, let the House agree on this matrix before he engaged the parliamentarians in Trinidad. So imagine he, the Chief Secretary, is engaging the parliamentarians, but we, the representatives of Tobago, don't even have a clue as to what he's talking about. Never seen the matrix. I am the minority leader. I represent, as I said, over 35,000 Tobagonians because I represent those who voted for the PNM and all the people who voted against, at the time, PDP, now TPP, and also the persons who decided not to vote at all. So in a real sense, I am the majority minority because I have more people supporting me than supporting you in terms of votes. I am the majority minority, and you didn't even have the courtesy. I really hope I get some injury time, Madam Presiding Officer. Thank you so much. So, Madam Presiding Officer, I'll move forward. Instead, this Chief Secretary is seeking, and I want you all to pay attention to the action, because he's attempting to appoint the Attorney General and a Chief Parliamentary Counsel to look to reform Tobago's legislative process and not consult Tobagonians. He empowers the chiefs, this motion empowers the Chief Secretary to write to the Prime Minister, bypassing this House, bypassing civic society, bypassing the people. This is a closed-door deal marketed as progress for Tobago. This approach, Madam Presiding Officer, lacks transparency. No, we are told about a position paper, yet none of us, at least I don't have it, have this policy paper. You would think in this motion, at least he would have laid the policy paper so we all can have an idea as to what the policy is going forward. Democracy, no public voice. No, I doubt he perhaps, and I would love to hear the member from Scarborough Mount Grace. I would love to hear him on this debate because he had a lot to say when we brought our motion seeking bipartisan collaboration to ensure that those bills were fixed to the best interests of Tobagonians and passed. And of course, one of his major concerns was the fact that it was the government of Trinidad determining for the government of Tobago how we should be governed. Yet his boss, because that is your boss, I know sometimes you don't like to hear that, but that is your boss. Your boss is saying that he's bypassing even you and go to his friends in Trinidad. So, Madam Presiding Officer, this is not democracy. And what about respect? Respect for process. Respect for the people of Tobago. And just simply we always just feel as Tobagonians, sometimes they make us feel less than. And you would think the Chief Secretary represents us, will make us feel equal, make us feel important. And on a matter as important as our right to self-determination, here we are, being asked to approve a motion that basically takes away that right from the average Tobagonian, from the man in Charlottesville, to the man in Palo-Tuve, to the man down on the beach down Store Bay. In this process, he does not have a say. And that is why this process is flawed, and I, as a Tobago-loving person, cannot conscionably support this. And I call for other Tobago-loving people, parties, interest groups to stand in defense of this autocratic process. If you love Tobago,
you have 5 minutes.
We will not be silenced because I've walked with the people. I've heard their voices from Scarborough to Palo-Tuve, from Bell Garden, where my friend represents, the Deputy Chief Secretary, to Bonaccord that is now without representation. So I represent the people of Bonaccord as well, because the Chief Secretary took their favored representative and sent him away. But, Madam Presiding Officer, the people feel betrayed. The people feel like they're not included, Madam Presiding Officer. And as I wrap up, when history of this movement is written, Let it never be said that we sat silent while one man battered away the people's voice. Madam Presiding Officer, I reinforce, the PNM supported the creation of the THA. The PNM supported reforms in 1996. The PNM led the last process that the Chief Secretary admitted was the best process. And the PNM remains resolute in its support for autonomy and the Tobagonians' right to having its self-determination. Madam Presiding Officer, the question therefore isn't whether we support autonomy. We do. We always have. The question is this: will we allow one man to hijack this cause for his political brand because he's a specialist at hijacking? He hijacked the member from Roxborough Party, and he hijacked the Sandals process because he one time said he didn't support Sandals, and then he turned around now and he's caught in Sandals.
Member, I'm
Madam
going to
Presiding
caution you with
Officer,
your
so
words.
as I close,
Thank
2 more
you.
minutes, I am reminded of the words once spoken by the Chief Secretary himself, words aimed at others, but today echo back to him. There's one part of the word you'll guide me, right? Nothing is worse than when your relative who sits in the seat of power is nothing but a house bleep who ignores the real dreams and aspirations of those he left behind in the field in Tobago. Today, I offer a version more fitting for this reality. Nothing is worse than when your relative who sits in the seat of power is nothing but a sellout, one who ignores the real dreams and aspirations of those he was elected to lead in Tobago. Because what we are witnessing here, Madam Presiding Officer, is not representation. It is abandonment. It is not leadership, but convenience. It is not courage, but calculated betrayal. Madam Presiding Officer, on this note, I thank you for this opportunity.